Hi everybody, Savannah Jackson here. Welcome to the Stavely Minerals update for the 20th of June 2020. In this presentation you're hearing general advice only. We haven't taken into consideration your personal financial objectives or needs. Trading involves risk. Past returns do not mean we'll make the same in the future. And Spectrum Life Proprietary Limited is an authorized representative of the Gleneagle Securities, which holds an Australian financial services license. Okay. Most of you, of course, know me by now. If you're brand new to these videos, welcome. However, we've been doing these videos now for a number of years, and so if you go back through YouTube, you can see a lot of these previous interviews that I've done with Chris. So let's now give Chris a call and discuss with him the update on Stavely.
Hi, Savannah.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Great. Well, we're all very excited. We saw the monster report that came out just recently, as well as your Rising Resources interview webinar. So quite a lot of information, obviously, has just come out recently. So it'd be great to have an update from yourself.
Yeah, sure. Look, I suppose it wasn't too long ago when we last spoke. At that time, we had indications that we were onto a pretty good hole with hole 87. We're getting some preliminary assays. Of course, I couldn't say anything. But look, the holes come out with that 87-meter intercept at 1.74% copper and 0.57 grams gold. And look, that was really pleasing in the context that I think it's fair to say that the discovery hole, hole 50, 32 meters at 5.88% copper and a gram gold, really got the market excited, and obviously the share price went up to $1.40 on the back of that. We raised some funds at $1 in a raising on the strength of that and hole 51. But since then we've been, intercepting really good widths and moderate grades of copper, so not spectacular, but there have been some higher grade zones within that. But I think it's fair to say that the market might have been a little bit disappointed that and a fear that we weren't able to replicate the tenor of the initial discovery hole. So, whilst this hole is not as high grade, it's worth pointing out that it's still in the higher grade zones. There's a 24-meter zone and then a 9-meter zone, both running in excess of 4% copper. And so you add that up to 33 meters of high grade, in excess of 4% copper and substantial gold also, then this hole really has been on a par with the discovery hole. So it's just really pleasing to remind people, well, look, there's a lot of drilling to do. We're only drilling the top 200 meters of a structure that we think is going to be mineralized to in excess of 1 kilometer's depth. We've got 2 other structures we've confirmed mineralized. So we're really on the tip of the iceberg here. And just to remind the market that as we go through this drill program, we will have those spectacular hits, or monster hits, as I called this one. 87 meters of well-developed copper-gold mineralization is very good in anybody's book. And so that was the pleasing aspect of it. And it really starts to speak to our strategy of trying to flesh out the near surface sort of material in people's mind's eyes. Hopefully they will be thinking, okay, well, this is the material that's available for an open pit type of operation, and hopefully we can give some firm numbers on what that might look like as we get into the resource estimation phase. And then we start to, the next logical step is to try and flesh out what an underground might look like. And so we start to get some deeper hits underneath the low angle structure, and some are coming through now, and we reported hole 85, of course, in the same announcement, further to the south, and that was underneath that low angle structure. And a good, again, moderate grade hit of 24 meters at 1% copper and a bit of gold. So the next logical phase is to give people comfort that we've got a project based on an initial open pit, and then we need to give them comfort that the underground looks good as well. So we come off the bottom of an open pit, and then the next logical sequence is to say, okay, well, there's one structure, the Cayley lode, that extends to depth, and reasonably we could expect that it would go to a kilometre or more, because we've got hits in other structures that go at that depth. And then we'd be looking to flesh it out with the copper lode splay coming into play as a parallel lode, and that sort of doubles the amount of material that you could access from underground. And of course, in our current drilling, as we start stepping back from the Cayley lode, we should start getting into the top of where we think that copper lode splay comes to surface, and we've identified that in previous announcements as a parallel zone expressed in air core data in the chalcocite blanket. And whilst the lode style mineralization is vertical and the chalcocite blanket is horizontal, the air core drilling was drilled vertically to flesh out that horizontal nature of the chalcocite blanket, and therefore not particularly well oriented with respect to the steeper vertical structures. But nonetheless, we do see in some holes an expression of higher grade copper and massive sulfides in that second trend. And so I'm just flagging to people, as we start stepping backwards with our drill collars and targeting the Cayley lode at deeper depths, we'll start to pick up the shallow portions of that copper lode splay and start to see that mineralization. So I'm very excited about that, and the implications as we bring in the copper lode splay to what that might mean for an open pit in the first instance, and then of course the underground component as well. Yeah, I suppose the other real element that we've introduced, and we've spoken about it a number of times, that the seismic data seems to be reflecting some porphyries at depths and some additional structures that we haven't yet seen in our drilling. And so that gives us a bit more confidence now to start planning up some deeper holes that might traverse across the mineralized corridor, if you will, hopefully pick up some of these other structures we haven't seen in any drilling yet to date, simply because there has been none in those areas, and potentially look to intercept the ultramafic contact faults and the Cayley lode mineralization at a depth of around a kilometre or slightly more, and that would give us a look at that sort of deep source region where we would hope we'd get some indication of the porphyry nearby. So there's a lot going on. The immediate focus on the shallow resources drill out, but there is a logical sequence of, I think you'd call it, technical components to come in that should be reflected in terms of the value proposition, both for a development and consequently be reflected in the share price as well. So we've got a narrative that we need to play out, and we need to be able to demonstrate to the market incrementally and in a stepwise fashion that there are added value coming in from additional material in the Cayley lode at depth, and then other lodes as well. And of course, the big picture thing, if we can hit that porphyry, and also on the caveat that it is well mineralized, then that could be a different story entirely. So it's been a pleasing couple of months, and hopefully some more news flow to come.
Yeah, there's so much to go through and to wrap your head around. I don't know how you guys can do it all the time and keep up with the intense drilling program you've got going. Everything you've just been saying, which is awesome, really sort of highlights the direction you're going. Trying to drill down into a couple of sort of specific points that I've personally noticed. You mentioned that I think is hole 88, hole 89, hole 86, they seem to be orientated back towards the opposite direction of the previous holes. So are they the ones that are now targeting the copper lode splay?
Okay, so they weren't targeting the copper lode splay specifically. The target for those holes and the objective for turning the rigs around was that we felt that there was an opportunity to drill from the serpentinite side of the structure. So go through the serpentinite at shallow depth and get into that contact fault, define mineralization in that contact fault, then go back on the other side of the fault into the sediments and volcanics, then go through the low angle structure, which would put us back into the serpentinite because there's a 50-meter offset to the west. So we go back into the ultramafic and the serpentinite underneath the low angle structure, and then back into the ultramafic contact fault and get a second intercept underneath the low angle structure as we come out into the volcano-sedimentary sequence. So really it was a case of it was kind of like, Buffalo Bill trick shooting, that we were able to get two intercepts, one above and one below under the low angle structure by drilling in a particular location and drilling that direction. And the objective there is to unequivocally demonstrate that the mineralization continues both above and below the low angle structure by getting two hits in the same hole. So that was the target. I can't speak about the results until we get the results.
Right, because I think those all those assays are still pending, aren't they? The seismic holes and the diamond drill holes.
Sonic holes.
The sonic holes, sorry. The sonic holes.
You're right. Yeah, that's right. So they're pending. They're at the lab. So yeah, again, has been our practice over the past little while. My intention is not to release single hole results.
Yeah.
We'll have a body of work together that can be presented in context, and then release that. And so I think we're probably a couple of weeks away to having that body of work together. But I think, as has been the practice the past couple of announcements, they've been quite substantial announcements, and so I don't expect that the nature of the substance to change at all. Yeah.
So are we a good 4 weeks away from another announcement? From the next announcement?
Look, my feeling is that it's not 4 weeks. It's probably a little bit less, somewhere between 2 and 3. I would estimate.
Okay. So between now and then, we just have to make do with watching you over and over again on that resources video.
Yeah, something like that.
We put you on at night and let ourselves drift off to sleep listening to your voice.
Yeah. Listening to my dulcet tones. Yeah, right.
That's right. Okay. Now you've said that you believe the mineralization extends 1 kilometer down because you've hit it in previous holes a couple of years ago, and that the veins can essentially drive you and direct you towards the porphyry. So now that you're targeting more of these veins and you're looking to go deeper below the low angle structure, are you more confident now that there's a porphyry at depth and that it's likely highly mineralized, or are you it's still a bit of a crapshoot?
Look, I think it's better to turn it the other way around and just say, look, if there's a mineralized porphyry down there, we're in a different atmosphere in terms of who would be interested in this type of deposit. And the reality is that, if you're talking about something akin to the resolution porphyry underneath the magma vein system in Arizona, that porphyry is jointly owned by Rio Tinto and BHP. I think it's pretty obvious that little old Stavely Minerals probably doesn't have the balance sheet to be able to throw several $1 billion at a single asset development. It's worth noting, I believe, that BHP and Rio at that resolution deposit have spent $2 billion so far, and that's for a shaft and some site works. But they haven't started the development. They haven't got the development go-ahead yet, so they've already spent $2 billion before getting the green light to develop. So, these are big dollar type developments, and it wouldn't be us. But I think the way that it should be looked at is this is a big system where we're seeing mineralized structures that are, for example, the Cayley lode across to the north-south structure is 600 meters laterally. Those structures both have to be tapping into the metal source region. So whatever's driving this system at depth is big. It's obviously got a formidable metal budget. It's got the right composition of fluids. these are pretty special systems, and so I think the way to think about it is, look, we've got an awesome chance at finding something that's uniquely special in Australia, in the Australian context, that's never been seen before. Not the porphyry, but this type of vein system leading down into a porphyry, and it's almost beholden upon us as management to make sure that our shareholders get a shot at that. And certainly the management team aren't going to walk away without having tested that opportunity. Notwithstanding that, if we do hit something like that, the natural owner probably is not us; it's somebody else with much deeper pockets. But certainly, we'll be riding away into the sunset with a happy bunch of shareholders if that's the case.
And so you've mentioned in the resources webinar just recently that you're going to be putting a few holes down, specifically hunting for the porphyry before the end of this year. Do you have a more defined time frame?
Look, I think of it in the context of logistics. So, we'll have two objectives with these holes, and at the moment, in my mind's eye, I consider drilling two diamond holes in the same orientation as our normal drill grid, so 070 azimuth, sort of east-northeast. And stepping back, maybe one along either just north or just south of the railway line that cuts across the project. And that's where we've got one of our seismic lines, so we've got good control on that seismic data because there's quite a bit of drilling nearby. And drilling from the north-south structure down across the entire bit of stratigraphy. So as I mentioned, in that position, it's about 600 meters from the north-south structure to the Cayley lode. If you get 50% of the way horizontally across relative to the depth of your drill hole at a 60-degree incline drill hole, a 1,200 meter hole will get you from the top of the north-south structure to the Cayley lode at around a kilometer's depth. So that's what we're thinking. It serves two purposes. One is that if there are structures in that part of the world, more vertical sort of structures that are mineralized that we haven't seen in any other drilling, because there isn't any in that part of the world, then we should pick them up. And as we get to depth and intercept the Cayley lode at, say, a kilometer's depth, we achieve full proper demonstration that mineralization from surface does go down to a kilometer. So that, when you think of a underground operation, the vertical rate of advance, or how much your development proceeds downwards in a given year, is about 50 or 60 meters. So if you can demonstrate that you've got at least a kilometer vertically of mineralization, people are starting to get a mind's eye of, okay, well, this is looking like a multi-decade operation. So, really, these long life type assets that aren't very common, and so that's an important achievement in its own right if we can demonstrate the mineralization continues to that depth. And the added bonus is there's no drilling at that depth, and we should, if we don't see the porphyry, we should see indications of proximity and be able to vector subsequent holes. And so the second drill hole at the moment, again, in my mind's eye, I envisage a similar oriented hole, but simply shift the collar shifted 200 or 300 meters further to the south, and same objective: drill across the stratigraphy, pick up those other vertical structures that we haven't seen in any other drilling, because there hasn't been any, and again hit that Cayley lode at around that kilometer vertical depth. And again, we should correlate between the two holes and get a vector to where the porphyry might be if we haven't hit it in either of those two holes. So it's it's very much a stepwise sort of a strategy, but those holes achieve a couple of things for us: picking up the additional structures, hitting the Cayley lode at depth, and demonstrating that in itself constitutes a long life potential production asset, and giving us a shot at the porphyry as well.
Okay, so as you were first explaining that, which I brought up on the screen so people can see, a picture It's what is it? Figure number 3, the aeromagnetic image with the drill collars from the latest announcement. Can you again just tell us approximately which hole the porphyry hunting holes will be drilled near to? Do you remember the number? Like 87, or up near the northwest, or down by the southeast?
It'd be down in the. They'd start down in the southwest. So if you were to go back to the color location plan that shows the land use, so that you can see the paddocks and that sort of thing. You see the railway sort of
hold on
coming.
A second. Let me see if I can bring that up. Oh, yep, I got that.
So you see the railway sort of coming angled across the page. So imagine a drill hole. So in behind the labels of drill intercepts, you see this little red line just poking its head out between the labels. That's the north-south structure. So imagine a collar either just north or just south of the railway, but collared immediately to the west of that north-south structure, and then drilling parallel to the railway.
Oh, okay, right.
And so it's a big step backwards.
Right.
So it's not near any drilling.
Yeah. So I mean, hole 49 was completely. It was far to the north, wasn't it? Which as the duster.
Yeah, that's
hole.
right. Yeah, look, and obviously in hindsight, we really at that time didn't realize the importance of this structural control, and we were just at the early days of recognizing the magma analogy, and we were drilling down the plunge of just to the east of that north-south structure. So it was really a north-south hole looking for the porphyry, and it had very little chance of hitting any of these subvertical structures that are in their own right more north-southish, because would have drilled parallel to them. So our thinking now is that the porphyry is actually at depth, sort of underneath, somewhere around the color of hole 85, but at a kilometer down.
Oh, okay, right. Right. So this, hole 49 ended up being about 1,800 meters. Do you suspect that these porphyry drills? I mean, you're saying 1 kilometer down, but could you go extend them if you're into mineralization?
Look, probably not in the context. Look, if we're in mineralization, we won't stop. There's no question about that. But if we think that we've drilled over top of it, we'll have to step back and drill another hole. The reason being is that we could pull back and we have done this with hole 44 because we drilled 44 wedge 1. But you pull back to about 500 meters, and you'd put a wedge in, and you probably only really get 1.5 degrees of separation. You can put a flexi barrel on and try and kick the hole off so it bends a bit. But the more you bend it, it's sort of like using a sewer snake sort of thing. The more you bend a hole, the difficult it is to turn, and the more likely you're going to lose the hole or break the rods or what have you, just because of the friction you create. So you don't get much separation. The daughter hole doesn't move that far away from the mother hole. I mean, they do it well in oil and gas drilling, but they've got flexible drill barrels that we don't have. So it would be, if it was a near miss and we were confident that it was a near miss, we would drill another hole.
Okay. Coming back to the current hole drilling, you've got hole 83 that's currently pending and stuff. Now, hole 83 moves quite a long ways to the southeast.
Yeah, and hole 83 missed the target. When you look at that section on 85 and 83, the target was the ultramafic contact, and 83 was drilled too far to the west to hit the ultramafic contact above the low angle structure, and hole 85 was drilled behind it so that we can hit that ultramafic contact below the low angle structure. So hole 83 missed, but the target above the low angle structure is in front of hole 83, The problem being that we don't have access to that paddock. We're in discussions to get access to that paddock, and realistically, if we did step in front of hole 83 and when having got access to that paddock and intercepted mineralization on the ultramafic contact, that would represent a shallow extension of about 300 meters of the Cayley lode. So we are keen to get in there. It probably extends the current sort of resource strike extent by another 50%, so it's important for us to get in there. Every indication, including from hole 85, is that mineralization does continue into that paddock, and we would reasonably expect it to go for another 300 meters. So
this is the paddock directly north of holes 85 and 83, like just.
That's right. You
20,
can see 85 and 83. They were drilled just south of a fence line.
Yeah, we see that.
Yeah.
And
so
is your target? Are you targeting more down that southwest direction as opposed to the northeast, like up at hole 66?
No, that's we see opportunity in both directions.
Right.
I think the trouble is that for the next couple of months, logistically, we're restricted in our ability to support a rig out in the middle of a paddock because it's so wet, and it makes a mess when you have to almost daily be taking materials out to those drill rigs, and if you're cutting up a rut in the paddock, it just looks like World War I battle zone, So what we try to do in winter is just stay in tight the areas that we can reasonably support logistically. Come 1st of October, and I made mention of accelerating the drill program. Once it starts to dry out and the rains sort of back off a bit, then there is an intention to accelerate the drill program, and that is hopefully we've got access in that paddock to the south, and also we move to the north. And in recent collar location plans, I've asked that there be a little blue annotation of the previous owner Beaconsfield's drill hole SNDD 001 up to the north there that intercepted 7.7 meters at 4% copper and a gram gold from around 100 meters, and then 9.5 meters at 3% copper and 0.4 grams gold from about 150 meters. And so that's in that northern sector north of the discovery hole that hasn't been drilled yet. It is worth noting that our hole 87, heading up towards that northern zone, a gap in our current leapfrog shapes, which people will see in the animation. So when they look at the animation, there's a drill hole with a couple of little blue intervals on it in this gap in the drilling, and that's hole 87. So that mineralization is open to the north, and so as I say, logistically from the 1st of October when things start to dry out, I wouldn't mind seeing 3 rigs up in that northern section. I wouldn't mind seeing 3 rigs operating in that paddock down to the south, and just belt it out leading up to the end of the year and a resources estimate.
Wow, so those 6 drill rigs, is that on top of the Porphyry rigs?
Yeah, look, I think probably the sequence will be if we could smash that northern-southern extension at shallow depths, the 0 to 200 meter sort of material that ostensibly available potential open pit development, and then step back and drill those deeper holes.
Right. Okay. Is there any potential risk that you don't get access to that paddock? Well, look,
I think the way that we look at it is that we do have right of access in terms of the legislation. We need to be, having said that, we need to be respectful of the landowners and their wishes and their concerns. So we're in a mediation process. We have options available to us, both with respect to the mining warden and also with respect to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. Clearly, the best way to resolve these issues is through mediation and making sure that we address the landowners' genuine concerns, and we're more than happy to do whatever needs to be done to allay their concerns and to compensate them fairly and generously, and just so that they see a benefit to us being there. I think the other realistic proposition now is that there is clearly the potential for development here that could mean a large number of well-paid and skilled employment for the region, which the region needs. Regardless of the flavour of government, whether it be federal Liberal or Victorian Labor, I think they do have a common theme in terms of a genuine desire to support jobs and families. So I think the level of support that we've received from all levels of government, including the local councils, is very much in harmony on that thematic. So I don't have any genuine concerns that we're not going to get access or that we're not going to progress the project.
Okay, that's good news. Hopefully, so are any of the are the drills working right now, or is it too wet right now?
No, there's 3 diamond rigs operating as we speak.
They are still operating, but it's just difficult to move them around.
Yeah, that's right. Everything's on track, so we don't have rubber-tired vehicles going in there. There's a few logistical challenges that we've done, put a lot of effort into dealing with. We did put the sonic rig off because it was through a different contractor, and they just didn't have the scale or the equipment to be able to support it logistically through the wet season. So that was sent off site a couple of weeks ago, but we're continuing with the 3 diamond rigs at the moment.
Will the sonic rigs come back, or are you finished with the sonic drilling?
Look, the sonic rig was a bit of a mixed blessing. I mean, it did well in terms of recoveries at shallow depths, which was the reason for bringing it in. So we achieved our objective over the strike extent that we needed it. If we extend further to the north or further to the south, we may have to bring one in again. But I suppose the nature of the beast is that these sonic rigs work on vibration to progress the bit at depth. It kind of loses its power beyond about 100 meters, so it really is only well suited to the shallower stuff.
Right.
But it's also the nature of the beast is because it works on vibration. It tends to shake the shit out of itself, and nuts and bolts fall off and things pull to bits, and they tend to. Or our experience has been that it operates for 50% of the time and is broken down for 50% of the time. So it's a little bit frustrating and not particularly efficient. I think it's fair to say that the guys on site are pretty glad to see the back of it for a couple of months.
Enough of that one. So with obviously this whole focus has been on Thursday's Goston, and you mentioned in the recent Resources Rising Stars webinar too that Junction, Mount Stavely, you have done some initial drilling there to demonstrate that it's mineralized, but you haven't really been focusing on it. Nothing like what you've done at Thursday's Goston. So if let's play this forward a little bit. Let's say you continue to prove up the mineralization here, and there's in fact a porphyry, or even not. Do you see, if you were to on-sell the project to a larger player, that you would sell Stavely and Mount Stavely and Junction as well, or would you hive off Thursday's Goston and sell that to a business and allow yourself to continue hunting down at the other potential porphyry sites?
Look, I think my experience has been that if we wouldn't, I doubt that we'd be looking at selling the project. I think we'd be looking at a takeover offer for the company.
Right.
So they'd want all the assets. And to be fair, one of our particular objectives in being a first mover into that area, and I mentioned in this video that when we went into Victoria, nobody wanted to be there, but subsequent to that, Kirkland Lake have had a cracker of a couple of years at Fosterville, very high grade gold, and the attitude towards exploring in Victoria has probably turned 180 degrees now. But because we were a first mover, we were able to put our foot on a big land position and cover almost all of the strategic ground that we wanted. And the very clear strategy there was that would be the type of thing that would appeal to a major if we were successful. They like to control a district rather than just have one deposit within a belt. So it was a case of, very early on, considering what would be attractive to someone down the track.
So therefore, I mean, would you then, let's say you shore up the mineralization here at Thursday's Gossan, would you be looking to then go and do a similar type of drill out program at the other sites, Mount Stavely Junction, for example, before you even consider entertaining a takeover offer from a major company? Or sort of, again, and what's the timeline? Like, I know a lot of people are asking, is this going to be a 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? In the video just recently, the webinar, you were playing out a potential 5 years to a mine type time frame. So I think people are just wondering, what's the sort of timeline that you've got in your mind about this whole thing?
Yeah, look, in the webinar, I think that was accurate. Sort of a 5-year period. Look, I think, to be fair to the Victorians, I think that their approval processes, while well documented and well understood, are probably not as mature in terms of the number of approvals per year that go through the process as compared to, for example, Western Australia. So I would expect that the process is probably going to take a little bit longer in that jurisdiction than it would in WA, and that's the nature of the beast. You go into these areas, eyes wide open. That. But having said that, in terms of timelines, I think the natural approach and the common approach in terms of you're onto a discovery, what do you do about the regional exploration sort of question, is that there's a very drill intensive phase that we're currently in fleshing out that near surface, as I say, so that what could be available to a starter project with an open pit. So that's really drill intensive, and in terms of traction in the market and all of that sort of thing, we probably get our best bang for the buck doing what we're doing in that respect. Once you've largely finished that near surface resources drill out, then whilst I do think it's important that we get some hits underneath that and give people comfort that there is a potential underground development that will come off that open pit and extend the mine life, I don't see the need to drill something like that out at 40 by 40 down to a kilometer's depth. I think we just need to be able to give people comfort that that's available. And I think at that point in time, after we've completed the intensive resources drill out, then our sort of drill capacity, if you will, sort of backs off while we start to do what you would consider the ancillary programs, which is geotechnical, groundwater testing, metallurgical test work, which, by the way, is commencing now. And all of those ancillary programs on what the project might look like, so that the drill intensity for the Cayley lode sort of drops off. And so then you can start to say, okay, well, let's look at the regional prospect while we're doing a lot of this engineering and desktop type stuff.
Right. So the timeline, then, it would be fair to say you're looking at least 2 years, probably more like 3 to 4, before really entertaining an offer from a major.
Yeah. Look, I think it. Yeah, I'm not sure about. Look, it's entirely for somebody else, whether it's a major or what have you. I think in my mind's eye, and there are a lot of caveats involved.
Sure.
We've got to be able to go through what the JORC code would call the modifying factors and demonstrate that there's that the thing is economic in whatever guise, whether it be the open pit, whether it be the underground. So there's a lot of work involved there. But having said that, I think where we're at in terms of what we know about the Cayley lode, I wouldn't expect that a major like BHP or Rio Tinto are going to be that interested in something like that. BHP is a lumbering behemoth, and it's not set up to do long haul open stoping, cut and fill type mining. They want block caving, or they want to quarry something. But anything more technically challenging than that, I think that they struggle. So really, we're looking at probably the more nimble sort of intermediates, like, for example, Independence Group or Oz Minerals or Sandfire, for example, as being interested in what we've defined to date and where we think that we have potential to take this. And look, corporately, I think that they need to see a lot more progress before they'd be willing to move on something like that. And it's entirely up to them what their time frame is. Certainly, the interest to majors is probably completely and totally focused on what we're able to do with the porphyry, and whether it's there, whether it's a decent grade, B, and there's a whole bunch of other factors that contribute to whether it's economic. Can you get down there? Can you can you do a bunch of engineering stuff just to satisfy yourself that you can actually extract it? So that's where it's at in terms of the timing. I think we're we should finish this resources drill out. There'll be an interim resource, hopefully the end of the year, depending on, as I mentioned, the access issues of north and south. But otherwise into early next year. But I think that gives those intermediate players a very good handle on kind of where the project's looking like landing in terms of scale. We need then to start fleshing out that underground potential, again, not in as great detail, but giving people comfort that it's there. Look, timing-wise, it's entirely up to them, but I think that we'll get there within the next sort of 12 months. From that point in time, we're going into the engineering studies and you go through the scoping study, pre-feasibility study, feasibility study, and as we progress through those, you get greater and greater resolution of what the project's really going to look like, and it's probably around that time that people get interested corporately, because they have a lot more information to deal with and they can come into something eyes wide open.
Okay. I don't have any other questions regarding Thursday's Gossan. I think you've probably spoken so much about it recently. Have you got any updates on the Tasmanian results? I know they had to be sent back to the lab.
Yeah, look, we released the photon results of the material that we did get across to Perth. We haven't had an opportunity to get back into Tasmania, and to a degree, it's a function of the West Australian government, because we can. It's kind of, I think I mentioned, it's kind of like Hotel California. We can check out, but we can never leave, because if we leave the state and we come back, we have to go into 14 days isolation, which is a little bit crazy. Tasmania's not completely opened up to us yet, so that's still on hold. So basically no news, and it's in a holding pattern at the moment.
Right, so it could be, who knows, months before you actually get back into Tasmania.
Yeah, that's right. And look, we'd look to resample that core, particularly the areas where we saw visible gold, and put the other half through the assay lab and see what it comes up with.
So that hasn't been done yet. Those assays haven't yet been processed by the lab.
No.
No, and so as you said, it could be months before you get those results.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Anything else you want to share with us before we finish up?
No, just that I think I have to just offer a comment that it has been a little bit surreal living in WA, because we don't have any community transmission. I went out to dinner a couple of nights ago in a restaurant with my wife, and we've been out to see some music. Actually, the social distancing requirements are down to 2 square meters per person. We went to this to see music, and it was actually really refreshing, because it was assigned seating. No one was allowed to stand up with a drink or anything like that. So you had lots of space. You could just sit at your table, watch the band. Obviously, pay a little bit more per ticket for because of the low numbers in the venue. But we have been living in a bit of a bubble here. I really have a lot of sympathy for people in New South Wales, for example, during that Ruby Princess sort of thing. We're speaking to people in London, and Peter Ironside sort of saying, "Oh, well, we'd like to be able to come and see you guys by the end of the year," and their immediate reply is, "Well, actually, you probably don't want to come to the UK."
That's right.
Yeah, so it's a little bit surreal because our operations haven't been impacted, other than myself and Jennifer not being able to get to site and have a look at the core, which is particularly frustrating when we hear reports of holes 87, for example, being drilled and how spectacular it looked. And we just have to be satisfied with photos, and that's it. So
I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so, yeah. Thankfully, we get the reports a bit before you guys do.
Yeah, of course. All right, great. Well, thanks again so much for your time.
Yeah, pleasure. And again, look, really pleasing just to remind the market that this is a big system. It will throw up these big intercepts, and I'm, very confident that there's more to come.
Brilliant. And please pass on. I think I'm speaking on behalf of all shareholders that we really appreciate all the huge amount of effort you and your team are doing. We're all very excited about Stavely, and to continuously see these great announcements come out and all the hard work you guys are doing. It's just been brilliant.
Yeah, it's been great. And just one other comment, I suppose, to close up. With respect to the Victorian government, people should be aware that they have given us $1.5 million worth of co-funding for drilling. So they've contributed to this discovery. They've granted us 2 retention licenses, one on the Stavely project, one on the Ararat project, that are duration of 10 years, renewable for another 10 years by application, and those are intended to give us the security of tenure to do all of the sort of the drill outs and the development type studies that we need to do, what the JORC code refers to as the modifying factors, to move this towards a mining proposition. And so, look, I have to say that we've had very good support from the government, and we found Victoria a very good jurisdiction to work in. So, it's not what people thought it was when we first went in that place.
Isn't that great? Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. Wish you guys all the best, and we look forward to the next announcements and more interviews.
Appreciate it, Savannah. Thanks,
mate.
Have a good
Cheers.
day.
Bye. Well, there you go, everybody. Another fascinating interview with the man. Thanks a lot for your time. I certainly hope to help, and I wish you all profitable investing. Good night.